Hey, how's it going, guys? I'm going to see if I can. There it goes. I'll get started in a second. I'm going to turn off that light so we can see a little better. Kind of shining back at me. Let me know if you can hear me okay. I'm in the office where I shoot some videos, and I got the. It may not have worked. I got the fan going, so hopefully you can hear me all right. Q's out. His dad's in town for a few days, and they're out playing golf. So I told him I'd fill in and do some office hours for him. So he's stuck with me today. Let me know. Give me a thumbs up or something too if you can hear me okay. If I need to yell, I can. All right, thanks. Sounds like it's good to go here. All right, so I'll pick up where he left off yesterday. I believe it was why do golfers intentionally hit a fade or a draw? Wouldn't golfers just want to hit it straight all the time? Yeah, that's what I'd like to do. That's what we'd all like to do. You want to sit up there and not even have to think at all. Just make a normal swing, and it's right down the pipe, straight as a string. Unfortunately, that's not exactly the way that your body learns. So I've read a ton on kind of the field of motor learning. I talked with a lot of I've met some good connections through there. That some really nice people. Dr. Tim Lee out of Canada, kind of literally wrote textbook on motor learning, and talked with a lot of research with him. Kay Anders Erickson, who wrote a book called Peak, Peak. He passed away a couple of years ago, but I had a few conversations with him and learned a ton from him. And just reading a ton of papers on how do you actually learn to do a motion. So the principle here is what's called interleaving practice, or some people call it varied or random practice. The technical term is interleaving. And when you have interleaving practice, what it means is that you have a desired outcome. Let's say it's a dead straight shot, but your body doesn't always know what dead straight is. And the crazy thing is, and you've had this happen many times, you wake up and it just feels different. You were hitting it straight as a string yesterday, hitting it the best you ever had in your life, and now you come out today and all of a sudden you're slicing it, right? And what the heck is going on? How'd that happen? That's always going to happen. You really never get rid of that. But the better your body gets at feeling that what's on one side or the other of straight, the easier it is to straighten that shot out. So, for example, many golfers play their whole life and hit a slice the entire time. They have no idea what it's like to hit a single draw. So when it starts to overslice and you start to lose distance and accuracy and all that, then they don't really know what to do to fix it. So they try some things out that don't really particularly work, and they continue slicing from there. So the real solution that you want to do at first is to hook the heck out of the golf ball, to learn to really hook it and what it means to close the face in relationship to the path, to learn to really slice it and open the face in relationship to the path. And you do these really big extremes at first. And there's actually another, I'll get into a little bit of the research because we've got some time here. This would be interesting to talk about. But there's other research that Dr. Tim Lee kind of headed up some research on that, which is called the challenge point. And this has been tested and proven where you want to be successful about 40 to 70% of the time. So if you're a player that's maybe never hit a draw or a hook and you're slicing every single time, you want to go ahead and be as extreme as possible until you can get that hook roughly 4 or 7 out of 10 times. Now that ball may hook 80 yards to the left. It may be a 2-yard draw, but it's turning over the right way. Once you can do that, then you would also have your slice that you normally play, and you'd have the extremes. Now, as you start to work on that, you can bring that in fine and finer tuned until eventually you get to what the pros are doing, which is hitting it almost perfectly straight. And if they start to overdraw or overfade one, then they can just barely kind of fine tune it. So you almost want, at the end of the day, you want that ball that almost flies just dead straight. You almost have to look at it a little bit, pay attention before you can tell if it's a fade or a draw. So the research on this, they've done a little bit in golf. Golf studies are particularly tough because you can't get golfers to stop playing golf while you study them. And it kind of mixes in a bunch of other external influences, right? But they did a study with free throws. You may have heard me talk about this before, where one group shot from the free throw line. They measured them for maybe 4 weeks. These are both beginning basketball players. Another group varied it up where they shot in front of the free throw line, behind the free throw line, to left, to the right, in an interleaving fashion. The control group that shot at the free throw line every single time only improved 1% over the span of time that they practiced, while the group that interleaved forward, back, left, and right improved 11%. So 10 or 11 times better. Another study, they would actually squeeze a handle and they tried to get right at, say, 35 pounds of pressure on this handle. Just a random test to see how well you can control feeling the pressure. One group tried to hit the number right on the button every single time, hit 35 pounds. Other group tried to hit 40, 30, all around it, higher and lower than it. It gave them different numbers to try to hit. So they learned how to adjust their pressure and get a feel for what's too much, what's not enough. When they retested those players, or retested those participants, the ones that had varied the pressure had improved their accuracy at hitting right at 35 pounds, but they never even practiced hitting 35 pounds. They were hitting above it, below it, but they were more accurate than the group that hit 35 pounds every single time. In the retention test on those are just two of the interleaving tests. There's one done from baseball, to where traditional baseball practice, they throw fastballs 10 or 15 in a row, then they'll throw some curveballs, and then they'll throw changeups, and they just have blocked. That's block practice, which is kind of the opposite of interleaving. And they had players doing it that way, and then they had them hit with interleaving practice, which is you don't know what pitch is coming. It could be a fastball, could be a curve, could be a changeup, whatever. All of these studies found that your true performance is going to be better when you work with interleaving practice, not only in the short term, meaning that you'll be able to hit the ball straighter, but your retention, which is arguably more important than like how well I'm doing today. It's how well do I retain this skill. So in a week, 2 weeks, a month, can I repeat the things that I'm doing right now? And they find with interleaving practice, not only do you acquire skills faster, but you retain them longer because you're actually learning what's going on. You know how to adjust those things. So long story short, if you want to hit the ball dead straight, which we all do, purposely hitting draws and fades, like we talk about in the ball striking masterclass, and that course is going over, is the quickest way to learn how to hit it straight, and it's the best way to retain the ability to hit it straight. So first you need to learn how to hit the different shots, then you need to dial it back and hit the straight one. So there's a course, Ball Striking Masterclass. We opened that up, just opened up recently here. Q's going to be kind of the main instructor with that. And in that course, we go over everything I just talked about there, from hitting the extreme draws and hooks. And then we go over what I call the big four, not only controlling your shot shape, but controlling your contact with the ball, being able to hit the ball first every single time, and then hit the ground after it. So being able to hit the center of the sweet spot. We get some really cool before and afters. You'll see people with, maybe their club face like this, and we have them do a test where they put a mark on their golf ball, and it makes a mark on the club showing where they made contact. And at the beginning of the course, it looks like a circle about like this, and by the end of the course, it gets way, way tighter. So we've had some really cool before and after pictures on there, and it's a fun. It's a course that most everybody really loves it once they get into there. And with all of our stuff that we do, if you ever try it out and you decide it's not for you, we'll just give you a refund. So hard to beat that. All right, so let's see. Hey Q, I'm trying out the straight line release, but it seems like when I focus on putting the club 45 degrees in front of me to split the arms, my body does some kind of involuntary brakes thing that stops me from getting into my follow through. Any tips would be much appreciated. Thanks, man. All right, so Dan, with the straight line release, that's exactly what's going on. So what happens here is your body slows down. Imagine that it's sort of like a ceiling fan. and you have this ceiling fan. Imagine the club is just attached to this ceiling fan with a string. As long as that ceiling fan keeps on turning, the angle between the fan and this club is going to stay constant. So as long as you're applying the same amount of force to this club, it's gonna keep the same angles, whatever that is. Now, as soon as you start to decelerate this ceiling fan blade, so if I reached up and I grabbed it with my hand and stopped the fan blade, all of a sudden I just stopped it, that club would fly on past and it would release. So what's going on there is that you do have a deceleration of the body that happens through that straight line release to get the club to release. Most people, I don't like to think of them actively trying to decelerate the body, though. I've found that almost everybody decelerates the body too early in the downswing. Like at the start of the downswing, they almost begin to decelerate it, kind of halfway in the downswing. The club starts to flip there, and then, so I don't talk as much about the deceleration phase, but that is happening. It's going to happen for everybody. So let me walk you through, and I'll try to talk louder. I'll be a little farther away from the camera. What I would work on if you're having that issue. So I would work on these drills where you are going into the straight line release and you feel like your body may be slowing down. You're doing kind of in a pausing position here. But then after I go from there, I'd go all the way around and I get my right shoulder facing the target. I get my right foot completely off the ground. So I don't know if we can see that. This is a big key. I want all the spikes in my shoe completely off the ground so that I can rotate my hips around. And I want to make sure that this foot is not square. So the last thing we want to do is keep the toe of this foot facing forward and me try to open my body because this is all going to get really tight. I want to feel like what the pros do is they fan this foot out a little bit. As they swing, they lift up their toe and it comes open even more and it allows them to rotate on through. So if you don't like that much movement, to simplify it, start where you're going to end up. So get this foot to where it's about 45 degrees open. And now from here, I'm going to practice my straight line release. And then I'm going to go back and make another swing, trying to hit through that. And I'm going to do those checkpoints. Right shoulder toward the target. This foot straight up and down. No, none of this. I don't want any of this where I still have pressure on my right foot. I'm off this foot all the way on my front foot. And then from there, make sure this foot is open so that I can get through it. And just pause there. Feel that finish position. It should feel like you're balanced on this front leg to where you can almost stand here all day. And that's what I found is that just forcing yourself to get this right shoulder around, get your body to really rotate through, that's the key to it. Most likely what's going on is you're going to the straight line release. At that point, the foot's barely off the ground. My right shoulder's back here, and I haven't come on through. You're probably feeling like you're getting there, and then this is your finish. It's like the shoulders have never come around. My weight's still on my back foot. I've never got my front foot. After you practice getting here, it sounds a little too simple, but once you get a good 15, 20, 30 reps, right shoulder around, especially the right shoulder, that's the big one. A lot of that other stuff is just going to fall into place, and you can just move through the straight line release, if that makes sense. So what you're feeling is something that is a must, but you've trained your body to stop there rather than training your body to release the club and then finish it all the way on around. So we could go into some really complicated stuff on kinematic sequence and stretch shortening cycles and all that. I just don't think it's really necessary. It's a lot easier to not have all that stuff in your mind if you don't need it. Get the right foot up, get the right shoulder toward the target. Now, if you're still having problems with it, then I would come back here again and say, hey, I tried out the drills you said, type out what you did so Q will know. Say, what do you recommend now? He's going to be able to give you some great options there. But let's not get I don't want to make it any harder than it has to be, right? All right, let's see here. Yes, so thanks. Great question, Dan. Lee says, when you start losing your confidence with the driver off the tee, do you have a go-to drill / swing thought to get it back in order? I do. For me, one of the things, so there's a few things you can do. Part of this goes back to have you worked on the true fundamentals that are going to allow you to have control of your driver? So here's one thing that people don't think about, and I think it's very important to realize. Hold on one second. All right, so when we have the loft of the driver, and let's say that there's zero loft on it. I know there's not. The driver obviously has some loft on the face. But let's pretend the driver face the loft is straight up and down. Every degree that it opens, the face is pointing that many degrees to the right. If the face was perfectly straight up and down, 0 degrees aloft. Every degree it closed, the face would be pointing that much to the left. Now, take the other extreme. I'll show you that. This is the new Glide 4.0 ping wedge. Just got one of those in. I like these. I love the shape of these ping wedges. They're really nice. One of the cool, I'll go off on a little tangent here because people might like this. So I think one of the cool things that they did, where there's some really good science on this, they've gotten really, really particular on how they cut their grooves, and they just get a little bit more spin than any of the other the grooves on the market. When the conditions aren't perfect, which is almost all the time. So they did a couple things. They cut the grooves a little sharper, and then when they put the finish on them, so they actually cut these to make them illegally sharp, too sharp. And then when they put the finish on them, that smooths it out, rounds it out enough to where it goes back into conforming kind of legal groove sharpness. So they do that on purpose. That's one thing that helps them get a little bit more spin. They also have a tighter groove spacing than you're going to notice on most wedges. And specifically on these last couple versions, the bottom groove is really low on the face. So a lot of times when you don't have a very good lie, these bottom grooves, if it's a little bit wet outside, these ping wedges will get 300, 400, 500 RPMs more spin than, say, a Vokey or a competing wedge like that. And the shape of them is just awesome. Ping does such a good job with their engineering. If there's one knock on these wedges that I've talked to them about it, other people talked to about it. So they're such engineers that they made this out of harder metal. That way the grooves stay sharper longer. So you can make clubs out of varying degrees of hardness of the metal. Ping wedges tend to be just slightly harder, and you won't wear out the grooves as fast, but they don't feel quite as soft because of that as compared to, when I use a Vokey or some other ones, they feel a little tiny bit softer. They do that on purpose to improve the performance. And then this little piece back here is actually interesting. This piece isn't actually metal. This is a real soft polymer insert that takes a lot of the vibration out of the club head and makes it feel softer than it is. So that way they can get away with making it feel almost as soft as some of those other ones, but keep the grooves a little bit sharper. So anyways, sidetrack there. Now let's go this way where, let's say I have this club face open 90 degrees straight up toward the sky. And you think about, if I have the club open, the face is pointing the same direction the entire time, straight up. If I close the club face 20, 30 degrees, it doesn't affect it as much. So that's what's going on when you hit a wedge. People always ask me, I hit my iron straight, hit my 7-iron, my 8-iron straight, hit my wedges straight. I get to the driver and I spray it all over the place. Well, because there's more loft on this, if the club's a few degrees open, the face isn't pointing as much open or closed as it would be with the driver. Because if you have a driver, because there's so little loft on it, every little bit that's open, it really affects it. I'm going to add insult to injury here again. If you hit it on the center of the sweet spot with a dead straight swing, square path, square face, it goes dead straight. We all know that. If you hit it just about a dimple off the toe, it's going to curve as much as 5 yards. So it depends on the distance you're hitting it, but that's about a 250-yard drive. One dimple or a little slightly bit more than that, ball curves 5 yards. So with an iron, it's not going to curve that much. There's not as much as called gear effect. So what ends up happening is you hit the golf ball off the toe twists open like this, and because the ball is stuck to it, it actually spins the ball in the other direction. So anything on the toe side hooks. This is also some stuff we go over in the ball striking masterclass and how to fix it. Anything on the heel side slices. So you have multiple things going on here. There's less loft on the club. That means any difference in the face is going to make it wilder in the distance. you have a much more of a gear effect on the driver. Any that you miss off the toe or the heel makes the ball curve more when you're hitting it with the driver. And then finally, it's the longest and fastest club. So if I have two different clubs and they're, let's say the difference between a lob wedge and a driver is almost, 14, 15 inches of shaft length difference. This driver is going to move a heck of a lot faster. So if I swing my driver 120 miles an hour, doesn't matter if it's 120 or 90, it's apples to apples. This is the theory behind it. If I swing my driver 120, that ball is going to leave the face a lot faster. It's going to go a lot farther. It's going to be a lot more wild than if I swing my middle iron and it's only going 90 miles an hour. And that's about what you're going to see. You're probably going to see almost, if I swing my driver 120 miles an hour on average, I'm going to swing my lob wedge or sand wedge probably in the high 80s. So it's quite a bit less. So long story short, here's why I'm going into all this long explanation. It seems like I'm going off on these tangents. If you know that, it's not that you don't hit your driver straight. You're hitting all your clubs. This is what I've found. I've tested a ton on these launch monitors, all this kind of stuff. You're hitting all your clubs about the same amount of consistency. It's just you notice it more in the driver because it's curving 3, 4, 5 times more than a middle iron. So what does that tell me? That's great news to know because now you don't go off thinking I need a new driver, I need to change my shaft, I need to do this, I need to do that. What you got to do is get your fundamentals correct. 5 fundamentals of the top speed golf system. And then also the ball striking masterclass is hugely helpful for that, being able to control your direction. So great, Clay. Thanks a lot. You just made me think that driving is impossibly hard, and you didn't give me any way of getting better other than saying you just got to practice and get better, right? So I'm not going to do that to you. There are a couple things that really, really help with this driver that I'm going to talk about here specifically. So if you come down steep, this is why we're doing the 20-minute shallowing fix now. This is something that has to happen if you're going to hit it straight, no matter what. So if I'm coming down steep in this club, what I'm going to end up doing so that I don't slam the club into the ground, I'm going to end up standing up out of my posture. This club's going to fall in behind me, and I'm going to kind of flip. So if you find yourself getting a little steep in the downswing, club shaft is a little steep, you're going to tend to stand up and flip, and that's going to make your ball dispersion go there. And the reason is because of the momentum of the club. So if you think about, if I'm swinging, my arms are swinging kind of on a plane like this. If my club gets outside that plane, my club head gets on the steeper side of that plane, my club wants to do this and fall in behind me. The face wants to just go wide open. What the pros do is they get if I'm swinging on this kind of a plane with my hands and arms, they get the club head below that plane so that as you swing, it squares up the face with momentum. Here's the way you can feel that. Go back to here, like you're making a little backswing just with your left arm, your lead arm. Put the club over here, and now swing down just like you would in a normal swing and watch what this club does. It wants to fly in behind me, and the face wants to go wide open. Then I have to use my hands and arms to manipulate it and throw it. If I do the same thing, but I took the club back here, now all of a sudden when I swing the club, or I swing my arms on this plane, the club automatically shoots more toward the golf ball, and the club face releases. It's just the physics of it. So that's what they call the Sasha McKenzie is kind of the guy that's in the forefront of this. And he talks about what's called the moment of force. It's a torque in physics. All that stuff's so you don't have to get into any of that complicated stuff. I spent hundreds of hours with him and the guys at Ping learning all this. But really what it comes down to is you got to shallow the club out. If you don't shallow the club out, you're going to have a tough time controlling the consistency of the face. You're going to have a tough time controlling your low point. You're going to have a tough time striking the ball on the same part of the face every single time. And you're really going to struggle driving the golf ball. So on our 20-minute shallowing fix, I'll lead you through there exactly what you need to do with your natural elbow position, your natural grip. I go through the whole process to get you to shallow it out. So that's what I'd recommend. If you're struggling with your driver off the tee, that's the first step that I would take. I do the 20-minute shallowing fix. You can get the results of that in just a single practice session up to that fast. If you want to break it down over a couple of practice sessions, that's fine too. Then once you're from there, then you're in a position to where you can do the other things that really matter a ton, which would be lag, straight line release, stable fluid spine, all that. You have to get this club in a fairly shallow position to be able to get the club to work through there with some lag and release. Now, once I get it shallow, then I have lag and I have the straight line release in front. That's the only time that the face is going to feel like you have complete control over it. So if you're hitting your driver wild, I can basically promise you that you're either steep, and that's causing the face to fall under, and now you have a really tough time controlling the face. You don't have enough lag, or your straight line release is too early. And they're all tied together. So basically what that's saying is you're moving the club through contact in a way to where you can't get unbelievable feel of the face, and it feels like the face is just changing a lot. If you shallow it out, get lag and straight line release, this face becomes way, way more consistent. It's just easier to control it, right? So that's the process that I would go through. 20-minute shallowing fix first, lag and straight line release, start working through the system doing that. And then finally, the ball striking masterclass helps a ton too. That's when you can really start feeling the face. You start putting these things together. So as much as I'd like to say, the 20-minute shallowing fix it's something that'll fix every part of your swing in a single session. So definitely, if you haven't done that, I'd go into it. The rest of it is truly the fundamentals. And I don't mean fundamentals like grip, alignment, stuff like that. You can have all kinds of different grips, all kinds of different alignments. You got to find what works best for you. But if you don't have the fundamentals I just talked about, the 5 real fundamentals of golf swing, you're not shallowing out the club, it's going to be tough, right? It feels like the face is all over. And I've been there too. Everybody, when they at some point was steep with their swing. So I know the feeling too. All right, let's see here. So I sort of answered that question. I thought it was important to go into some of these things because I want you guys to be successful. I kind of get on a tangent here. But specifically, if I lose confidence with the driver, what I go to is, number one, I'll loosen up how tight I'm gripping the club. You see, if I get real tight with the club, it's very easy to start to get it too steep, manipulate it. It's easy to start trying to flip it through contact and get your wrist working too much. The hands, I soften up my hands immediately. From there, I'll check my alignment, make sure that nothing has gone way different than I normally do it. That doesn't mean that I'll always line up straight. If you normally line up a little bit to the right or a little bit to the left, that's totally fine. You just need to know what your stock alignment is and make sure that you haven't gotten way off track from that. So I'll soften up my grip. I'll work on my alignment. And then finally from there, what I'll do is I'll start with half swings and I'll build it from there. So what I'll do is I'll go little swings like this with the driver. I'll tee it up. I'll make a swing. I'll almost even choke up on the driver a little bit too. I'll make a swing where I go back to about here, and then I come through to a full follow through, and I adjust a little bit more draw or a little bit more fade until I can get it dead straight. So I have videos on the course, how to hit a draw, how to hit a fade. If you're struggling with those, watch those first. But I'll get it to where I can feel my sequence. So again, what I'm working on is my transition, my weight shift into the follow through. I'm getting my timing good. I'm trying to slow down to where I can work on my timing. Once I start to hit 5 or 10 or 15 shots relatively straight at that speed, maybe 60% of a normal driving distance. So if you drive it, 250, let's say let's aim for 175, something like that. From there, I'll just go a little farther back. So almost like my left arm's a speedometer, my shoulders are a speedometer, and I'll just inch back a little bit farther back. So 5-10 swings here, 5-10 there, 5-10 there, and I'll stair step it. All of these I'm going to finish all the way on my front foot, just like I went over earlier. Right foot off the ground, right shoulder toward the target. And if you're way off track, what you're really saying is, if I've been a good driver in the past, I've developed the good fundamentals that I need to hit the ball really well, then it's all about just sequencing and timing to get it back on track. So it's a two-piece answer. The real answer is most of the people that I work with and when we're seeing the swings, haven't developed those core fundamentals, haven't shallowed the club, lagging straight line release. As you start to do that, though, if you do get off track, slower swings, start at a speed that you can find your rhythm. And then once you find your rhythm, I'm just trying to gradually add a little bit more speed to it. And then as I get the rhythm there, I'm getting a little bit more speed, and I'm going back up to 100%. So I'm starting at kind of what feels like 50% speed, getting my rhythm, getting my timing, and then building it to there. I would even say that every time I play golf, every time I hit golf balls, that's what I'm doing. I'm starting off at a slow enough speed to where I can find my timing. Usually that's going to be with a sand wedge or a short iron, and I'm going to hit 50 and 60-yard shots until I get loose. I get the feel for what's straight, and then I'm going to go to 70, 80, 90, 100, and build it up from there. You don't have to do it that way, but I found it's easy. That's the easiest way I found to get your rhythm and your timing. So Steve G says, another question, having trouble hitting the sweet spot. I'm lining the ball up towards the toe at address, but I'm hitting the ball off the heel on my swing. Any suggestions to make better contact? So if you're hitting it off the heel, I'll go over a couple things that are going on there. But it's a two-part question. So this one's actually really intuitive, or really counterintuitive too. This one took me a long time to figure out. Let me grab a golf ball. And this is when spending so much time studying the motor learning stuff, it's oftentimes the exact opposite of what you think. So if I'm hitting it off the heel and I line it up off the toe, my body knows without a doubt that I don't want to hit it off this toe. It doesn't matter what you tell yourself. Doesn't matter how much you try to convince yourself to hit it off the toe. You know for sure I don't want to dink this off the toe and have it shoot over into the woods 15 feet from me, right? So you'll naturally, when you swing, back swing and then down swing, you'll start to swing out trying to hit it more toward the sweet spot. The problem is that what feels like the sweet spot to you right now is actually the heel. So you start on the toe, and then by the time you swing out, it's on the hosel. I actually find this is a better way of doing it. Start on the hosel, because then your body knows, heck, I don't want to get near this hosel, and then intentionally try to hit it as much off the toe as possible, and you'll actually find the sweet spot. So that is the intention part of it, and by changing your intention, you can change the outcome dramatically. The second part is there could be some physical things that are going on, some actual technique pieces that are going on. Obviously, you're going to want to check the basics, which would be, am I too close to the golf ball? So let's imagine here's a golf ball here. Let's see if I can see. That should show up. Let's say that I'm too close to the golf ball. My hands are against my body, and my club is on the sweet spot. Well, now when I swing, I'm naturally, as the club swings faster and faster, I'm going to swing out on it, and the club's going to be out there. We all know that that's not going to work or be good. So check your spacing. I want about a hand width between my groin, my crotch, and the butt end of the club is pretty good. Is a pretty good amount to be with a driver. With an iron, that's a good rule of thumb. It could be a little bit more than that with the driver, is totally fine. I wouldn't get much less than that unless you're just talking about like a little tiny chip or pitch. That might be okay there. But I'd like about a hand width there. Number two, most of what's going on is your hips are forcing the club out. So if you imagine if my hips go this way, it's going to run into the handle, and then it's going to start pushing the handle out this way. So again, if I'm steep, I tend to stand up out of my posture to shallow the club out. It's going to force my hands out this way, and then I'm going to do this. It's going to be more toward the hosel. So my hands start going up this way. My hips go toward the golf ball. That's all from being steep as a start. So I'd go to the 20-minute shallowing fix to start fixing this. But then the second thing I'd work on, the easiest thing I'd work on here, this little trick I found over the years, is try to get the handle low. So if I can get this handle feeling like it's lower to the ground, so instead of letting my hips go this way, letting my hands go high, you see I can't get this handle low if my hips are going forward. There's no way to do it. So naturally, by trying to get this handle lower, almost feeling like your handle's down here, it won't be, but feeling like it's down there, not only will it help you to shallow it out, because if I'm going to get on this flatter plane, I can't do it by going from here to there. I have to shallow it out and come in lower. That can be a nice little trick to feel to kind of get over the hump of inconsistent face strikes, especially on the heel. The heel is also by far the most common because that steeper club, you start to stand up out of your posture, the hips push it out, and then the club starts to back in like we're talking about. So a lot of these things kind of stem from 20-minute shallowing fix. That can really help with it. Another thing here that I kind of on a tangent, but I just kind of like talking about this stuff. If you're hitting off of bare lies, like really tight lies, this is why so many people struggle with this. You see, when my hips go toward you think about my hips go toward the target, I have a steeper club. It shoves my hands up, and look what it does to the lie angle of the club, right? So my club is too vertical here, only the toe is touching. If I had a golf ball on this hard pan flat surface, I couldn't hit the sweet spot because look how much the sweet spot is getting risen up off the ground. So anytime I'm too steep, it has a sweet spot up off the ground. This is why so many players struggle hitting off tight lies. They have to get it a little bit teed up in the fairway or in some short rough. As I start to get my shaft angle lower, now that sweet spot's sitting as close to the ground as possible. Same thing with shaft lean. If I lean the shaft backwards, look how it's pulling the leading edge up. As I lean the shaft forwards, look how it's pulling the leading edge down, and now the sweet spot is close to the ground. So if you're struggling hitting off tight lies, if you're struggling standing up out of your posture, if you're struggling with all those things, the root cause and where I'd start where there's kind of that 20-minute shallowing fix course, get the club shallowed out, get it coming in at a better angle. Then you can work on staying in your posture. You can work on shaft lean. You can work on lag. You can work on all that stuff. So it's a kind of a snowball effect there, which is nice. You don't want to have to work on 10 different things. This kind of one thing fixes a lot of it. All right, let me see here. Haku, I am swinging inside in versus inside out. Do you have any drills that promote an inside out swing path? I have everything starting left. So not to bring up the same thing over and over again. The 20-minute shallowing fix will help with that, but I have a drill I'll show you here real quick that's kind of a cool one. Let me grab a pull noodle real quick. Actually, I can grab this box. Anything is fine. So what you want to do here is I would make some swings, just normal swings like I'm going to hit toward the camera. And I would say, okay, when I'm coming through, I want my club to be about like that. If I'm coming over the top, then my club's in here. So I'd say, okay, I'm gonna put a box here to where it would almost hit. And it needs to be fairly tall like this. And I would just get my spacing to where I'd say, okay, I'm going to hit this box, but even there I would hit it. So I need to scoot a little bit more out. And then I would make some swings where I come from the inside. So I still want to practice shallowing it out from the inside. But then as I follow through, I want my hands to keep going and get over that box. Now that's extreme, but that can really be good for you to not cut it back off to the inside and hit that box. So just putting that there, because it really forces the hands to go this way, or you're just going to whack into this box big time. If you don't have a tall enough box, this is what that wedge came in. You can grab, hold on 1 second. This is a pretty cool training aid you can have laying around just to make different things in your house. It's just a random block. Doesn't matter. There's no reason this angle is on there. It's just whatever piece of wood you want to put it on. It's a flagpole holder that you can adjust. So you can loosen up this wing nut and you can tilt this on different angles. It's a alignment stick, right? So this whole thing's like $5. I don't know how much it costs. And then just a pull noodle over top of it. So the cool thing about this is you can loosen this up. I'm not going to get into a ton of drills, but you could loosen this up and put it vertical, and you could have this as being the extrusion that your hands have to hit. You could also do some pull drills to where you put this pool noodle to where you have to shallow out inside of it and hit golf balls. You can do tons of little drills like this. You can put it on your lead side, to where I want to feel like when I start my downswing, I want to get my hip right on that, but I don't want it to bust through it. And I can kind of use that as a guide to feel if I'm doing that. I could put it on my rear end like this, and I can actually feel like I push back into this pool noodle, so I can feel if I'm staying in my posture, getting the hands over like we talked about. I mean, is this going to change your life, be the greatest training aid ever? Probably not, but it's something that for $5 you can have it laying around, do a variety of drills with it. So definitely not mandatory, but you can do some cool things for just a few bucks at that. Let's see here. Hey Q, love all the tips I've gotten from office hour. My current struggle is when shallowing the club in the downswing, I seem to have difficulty rotating the wrist, which usually results in a closed head, and a hard shot to the left, right-hand player. So rotating it. So there's two ways to rotate the wrist. I'm not sure which one you're meaning here. So I could roll the wrist over each other, which this is basically keeping this wrist is going to stay flat, and I'm rolling it this way. So this is flat the whole time. Or I could, what's called going into wrist flexion and wrist extension, that would close the face. So if I roll them over each other with flat wrist, that closes the face. If I get more bow and more wrist extension to the right hand, that closes the face also. So both of those close the face. When you're doing the 20-minute shallowing fix, that's probably where we're working on this. What you want to do there is you want to feel like once you've already gotten a ton of shaft lane, you're getting those draws like we talked about, you want to exaggerate playing a fade. So really feel like that you're getting a ball. So almost imagine when you're hitting a shot that you're going to feel like you shallow it out, but then from there, you're going to swing left and hit a big fade. So you're doing, let me step back and say real quick, you're doing the perfect thing. Because if you overhook it and you get it shallow from the inside, see, shallowing it out makes it fade. Coming from the inside, because this club face goes from, this would be very steep and the face is square, all of a sudden the more you shallow it out, the more the face is open. So being able to hook it allows you to get shaft lane. It allows you to do the things you need to do to get it shallowed out and not have to steepen up the club to square it. So it's really good for your swing. So if you're hooking it right now, fantastic. It doesn't really have to be more complicated than if I try to swing left and hit a fade and it still hooks, just swing more left and try to hit even more of a fade. Think of a 20-yard slice. Think of a 30-yard slice. So you're changing your intention. I don't care what my intention is. It doesn't matter to me if I go up and I feel like I'm going to hit a 20-yard fade and I hit the golf ball and it's straight as a string right down the middle of the fairway. That's totally fine. So whenever you're overdoing one, if I'm snap hooking it, I want to try to play a fade. If it still hooks, I want to play a slice. If it still hooks, I want to play the biggest slice possible. So I have very rarely seen someone get too shallow and too far from the inside, get too much bowing of the wrist, get too much releasing of the club, and get too much of a hook because of that. I just never see it happening. I always see we get a little bit from the inside, and then we roll the wrist, kind of slam them shut, and that gets the face closing down. So if you're doing that, you just feel like you keep on getting more shaft lane, open in the body more, feel like they play that fade, and it's going to straighten it back out. I mean, I could get a lot more complicated with it than that, but I just rarely see anybody where I say, hey, go ahead and try to play a 20-yard fade. Now that you got the club, and here's the difference. Now that you have the club shallowed out from the inside and you're closing down the face to hit that nice draw and you're in a good position here, the last thing I want to do is start to change my swing and get the club steeper and do some other things to hit it straighter. I think you're probably doing everything right. You just have to change your intention. You're probably not used to closing the face that much. So you're actually in a really good spot. You just got to exaggerate a little bit more. And if you're starting at left, that's the face angle. The ball starts to the face angle. So the face is too closing down. Feel like you're hitting that big fade. That's going to open it up right away. So let me make sure I answer that right. Love all the tips. Got in the office hours. Correct struggle shot in the club in the downswing. The same difficult time rotating the wrist. Yeah. So long story short for there, Michael, more shaft lane, open up the stance slightly, swing more to the left, and you're doing everything right now. I want you to close that club face down. So don't stop closing the club face down because that'll go back to the old habits. Just try to play a little bit more of a fade. That's exactly right. Hey, thanks. SAQI. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. I don't want to mess it up. Appreciate it. Yeah, so JTS said some. I'll get into that here a little bit since we have multiple questions on that. In the system, and what you're talking about there is this 20-minute shallowing fix. There's a lot of concentration on hitting a hook and then straightening it out. Can you provide more insight on the drills on getting rid of the hook? So let me get into a couple of those. So there's a couple moves that players do to try to square up the face. Most people don't get this to square up the face and close it by getting this wrist bowed and the right wrist back. Or most players don't have a good grip to where they can get to impact, take a grip, and have that face square from there, and then base everything on impact. So what's going on there? Long story short, everybody's face is too open. Now, to solve that and hit it straight, we start to get steeper, which closes the face. We start to flip the club. So anytime I flip the hands, it starts to close the face a little bit. We do these bad things that are going to make us inconsistent golfers because we want to square up the face and hit it straight. So we start hitting it straighter, but we're doing steeper swing, flipping through impact, those kind of things. The reason I want everybody to hook is because I never see anybody that has too much shaft lane. I just never see it. I never see anybody that overbows the wrist and over closes the face. I just don't see it very often. So I want you to take your natural grip like we talk about in that 20-minute shallowing fix course. I want you to shallow this club out away from the inside and get these giant hooks because that's going to get you shallow, get you lag, get you shaft lane. It gets the technique pieces right to have a great golf swing, but the result will be bad. The result will be a hook. Then once we get these technique pieces right and the hook it's still hooking, it's a very easy fix to then just take that same swing from the inside like this, feel like I'm swinging more this way to the left, and having the face stay more open and hit that fade. So if I ask players to go ahead and feel like the face stays wide open and they swing more to the left, that's a really easy change for most people to do that. So that's the process I want you to go through. That's the quickest process you can go through to get the club shallow, shaft lean, all that kind of stuff. So once you've done the drills, keep the inside shallow club head, but then I'm just going to feel like I'm swinging, like if this is straight ahead where I'm hitting this simulator, I'm going to feel like I'm swinging here, and I'm going to feel like I'm holding the face open to where if I'm normally releasing the club, it released something like that. I'm going to feel like I have the face open like this. And this is a good checkpoint. So if I come shallow, impact, and I have the face like this, more toward the sky as I'm coming through, the odds of me not hitting a fade or the odds of me hooking the ball, practicing doing this, are almost zero. So that's exactly what I want you to do. Get it all shallowed out, get it hooking first. That's perfect. Then from there, if you're normally releasing it and the club face is like this one, say when the club is parallel to the ground in the fall through. If the club's parallel to the ground in the fall through, my club face is like this. Start out by trying to swing a little more left and feel like the face is slightly more open. If it's still drawing, go a little more open, more open, more open. I find players, it's so easy for someone to exaggerate and hold the face like this, and it's all of a sudden it's a big slice. So that's an easy exaggeration. So to recap, shallow it out, hook the heck out of it. That's the best thing you could possibly do, because that's telling me that I can shallow it, I can get lag and get all this stuff, shaffling that I want. Then from there, start to swing a little bit to the left and have the face a little bit more open in kind of that last parallel in the fall through. If it's still not fading, just do a little more. A little farther left with your intention, more open with the face. If it's still going, hooking, a little more left swing, a little more open face. See, we're doing the opposite of that in the drills. We're coming away from the inside, we're swinging to the right and closing the face, because that's what you need to feel just to get the overall motion. Then we're just backing off of that a little bit once you get the feeling for it. So it sounds complicated. It's really not too complicated. If you follow those three progressions, so progression number one is to hook the heck out of it on short swings, like the first drill that I go. Progression number two is to get that ball to start to the right and then hook. And then progression number three is to straighten it out. If you're struggling with the straightening out phase, most likely you skipped over part number two, to where you got the ball to hook, but you didn't get it to start out to the right. So you didn't get your path enough from the inside. But if you follow the three steps, you hook it, you start them to the right and hook it, and then you go through what I just talked about here, or step number three, drill number three, it'll work like a charm. But most of the time, I think piece number two gets skipped there sometimes, where players don't start it enough to the right, and then they're not quite sure what to do to straighten it back out. So that's the best advice I'd have for you there is go back in, make sure you're doing piece number two right. And then if that's working, it's such an easy fix, because you just try to feel like you're opening more, swing more to the left, face a little bit more open. All right, let's see here. Hi, Clay. Hope you're well. Yeah, doing great today. Hope you're doing well, too. Can you please demonstrate the right shoulder works in the downswing? A tip to start it the correct way would be greatly appreciated. Obviously, having mine moving forward and hence coming over the top, early extension, etc. Yep. So let's go on that. That's a great, because this is directly related to what we just talked about. So if we want to stay in posture, see, at impact, if this is straight ahead, at impact, if I'm going this way, my body is here. So my hips are 45 degrees open, my rib cage, my chest is 45 degrees open, and then the only thing that makes it look like it's square is the fact that my left arm is across my body and holding onto this club, and that makes it look more square. So for example, if I do this, there's impact. This looks really open, my upper body does, but then when I pull my left arm across my chest, now it looks a lot more square. You might even see this left shoulder kind of popping out there, even though I'm open with my body. So it's that left shoulder kind of, instead of being here, the left shoulder is protracted across your body, and that makes the shoulders look more square than they really are. So I think that's really important to understand first, is that when you're at impact, the body is very open. And then it's just essentially the club is coming in away from the inside of that. So given that, what is the right arm supposed to do? So what is the right shoulder supposed to do? What I don't want to do is if I don't have any side bend and I'm opening my body, all of a sudden this shoulder goes way out here like this. What I'm doing to fix that in the golf swing is I have side bend. This is the impact position with your shoulders. So what I mean is my hips are still straight. My shoulders are tilted though. So if I do that in the golf swing, let me go ahead and just walk you through a progression here of how to get into impact. So let's say I'm open 45, I bend forward, I have the club here, my left arm is across my body, and I'm in a lot of right side bend. So essentially I'm doing this, opening, tilting down, and then my arm is across my body. If my right arm isn't bent and I'm not in side bend, that would look like this. And that would be a giant over the top move. This right shoulder has to tuck as that's happening. So a great way to feel that is just what we did here. Let's start out with doing this. Big amount of right side bend. Take your right shoulder, or if you had your hands like this, let your right hand slide down until it's almost on your knee with your club. Take that club in your right hand. So keep your body in this position. Put the club here. That's impact. And then I'm just going to bend forward a little bit, open up my body a little bit. Now I'm in this big right side bend, this big shoulder tilt, and I'm just grabbing the club. If I'm looking at it from this way, if I let that hand slide down all the way, here's my impact position, my club behind me, hinge forward, open up a little bit. That's where I'm at. So you can see how this shoulder is much lower than the left shoulder. If I start my downswing and I get my shoulder this way, I don't have any of that right side bend, and my shoulders stay level. As I open up, it's going to be kicking the club out. This right shoulder is going to be kicking the club out. So here's a great way to feel that. That's a kind of a complicated explanation. I'm just trying to paint the picture that there's a lot of this at impact. So this is impact. That's where you want to be. Right shoulder down like that. Here's a simpler way of feeling that. Put your arms out to your side like a helicopter. If I turn in the backswing, this would be flat, no left side bend. If I tilt my helicopter blade down, I'm in left side bend, just like I'm talking about in the backswing. As I do this swing and I go this way, as I open my shoulders, so my shoulders are now here. If I have my hand pointing down toward the golf ball, look there, and tons of right side bend. Or that would be this way in the downswing. So a great little drill for this is just let your arms swing and let your shoulders match it, but just go steeper like that. And that's going to train you on the right shoulder motion. That's going to tuck in that shoulder. Then from there, take the hand a little bit more like a golf swing, recreate those same feelings, steeper swing. And then finally, you can recreate that same thing with a golf club. So I'm here. As I come through, the shoulder's going to tuck under a little bit. So that's the same feeling as this. I'll just hold on to the golf club now. That's probably the easiest way to do it is the helicopter swing, go a little bit steeper, and then I can just make the same thing with a club. So if I wasn't in right side bend, my helicopter wouldn't stay at the ball. My helicopter would kind of do this. All right, kind of level out. That's the same thing as standing up out of my posture. If I start here, I stand up out of my posture, these fan blades are going all over the place. I just want to keep everything down toward the golf ball as I'm doing it. So helicopter drills are probably one of the easiest for you. I also like to feel like, for me, if I had at impact, if I want to get that shoulder tucked, it can start down this direction. It has a tuck more here. I'd like to feel very tight, like my elbow. I almost want to feel like if somebody had their hand between my armpit, they wouldn't be able to kind of yank it out of there when I'm at impact. I really want to feel connected with this right side of the body, get that shoulder down, and that's going to help me as I'm coming through there too. So hopefully that helps kind of explain, and that's a little bit of a roundabout way of explaining it. But I think the helicopter drill is probably the easiest and most effective for you. Hey Clay, I'm having trouble picking up the ball flight off the tee. I tend to hit the ball quite high. I think it has something to do with this, but I'm moving my head too much. Any suggestions? So a few things going on there. I'm having trouble picking up the ball flight off the tee. I think you mean seeing. I think Jim's talking about seeing the ball flight. Hitting the ball quite high. I think it has something to do with this. I'm moving my head too much. So basically hitting it high and moving your head quite a bit. That drill I just went over is actually really good for moving your head too. Because again, I have to get those tilts to not sway. So here's what I mean by this. If I keep my shoulders level and I turn, so I turn my shoulders, but I don't tilt to the left. So in the backswing, there's left tilt. It'd be kind of like this. And then as I rotate, that's going to be on plane. So it'd be left tilt. As I rotate, that's going to be in plane. So you're starting out with your shoulders a little this way. Again, if you do the fan blades, you're going to tilt to the left. You're in plane. If I level that out, all of a sudden, a lot of times I'm going to push my body off the ball. Same thing in the downswing. If I don't get in right tilt, I can't keep my head on the golf ball here. My head's going to get pushed up on my right shoulder, and typically when my right shoulder stays too high and I get over the top, that's going to kind of shove it forward. So long story short, if you can do this, do your airplane drills again. Let's put a golf ball. We'll get somewhere you guys can see this. Put a golf ball right here. As I make my backswing, I want to get my head, my airplane wings, and everything right over top of this golf ball. And then as I make my downswing, this will be for an iron here, but you can do it for driver too. So make a downswing, I want to do the same thing and have my head and everything on this golf ball again. Now, that's going to allow you to be in a position where you can open up and get shaft lean or have some lag, which is going to help you to hit it lower, and it's going to help you to keep the head from moving around. So if my shoulders stay level, my head gets pushed this way, my head gets pushed that way because my shoulders are just ramming into it. As my shoulders tilt under my chin, there's a lot of space here, and I can keep my head much more still. So that's the solution to keeping your head still. A few drills like that. That's the same solution to being in your posture. And as far as hitting it high, again, the 20-minute shallowing fix, what we're going to do there in that drill, I'll show you, is we're going to get to impact with a lot of shaft lean. My hands are well in front of the club. I have this shaft lean, which means I'm going to take loft off of it. That'll bring your height down with all your clubs. So helicopter drills that we just talked about, get those shoulders kind of clear under the chin, both in the backswing and the downswing. That'll keep you much more stable. Obviously, the stable fluid spine talks about all this stuff too, to where we keep our head fairly centered behind the golf ball, and we rotate around it. Those are all good things for you to work on with that. And then the 20-minute shallowing fix on top of it. Hey, thanks, Bob. Appreciate it. Ben S. said, had a great round today. Finally got my driver working with the shallowing technique. That's awesome, Dan. Great to hear it. Irons and woods have been fine. My fixture for the driver was to move the ball towards the center like all my other clubs. Hit it 300 yards a day, normally 240, 260. Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, nice work. Most other drives, 20 yards longer than normal. Nice draw. That's awesome. Great to hear it, Dan. Got me close enough. Use my shorter irons and dropping them closer to the flag. Had 3 birdies. My best yet, usually 1. Hey, putting, tell me about it. That's my nemesis. I'm a pretty good putter, but that's kind of tour level putting, and where I'm at, I lose a couple strokes around to tour players putting. So, hey, you can't have it all. Thanks for that shallowing course. That's great to hear, Dan, man. Awesome to hear that it helped you out a ton. That's a cool course. Glad that it worked out putting that together, and hope a lot of people were enjoying it. I'm trying to get close to a straight lead leg. I'm lefty, which is a right leg, at contact, but I'm still coming out of my bent legs. What should I be trying, and what drill do you have? Let's see, straight lead leg. So your leg should be slightly bent at impact. It shouldn't really be straight until you get to the straight line release. Let me go through what I would do with this. So when you're coming to your downswing, I want to feel like, let's talk about pelvis tilts here a second too. So if I tuck my butt under, so I feel like I'm sticking my butt out this way, or if I have my belt buckle, if I'm rotating my pelvis until it's pointing more down to the ground, And then I could rotate the other way where I'm kind of tucking my butt under this way and my belt buckle would be going up. In the downswing, I want to tuck my belt back, have my hips kind of come down, and I'm almost going into a squat move. So my belt buckle is pointing more toward the ground, and I'm kind of squatting like this. We're talking small amounts. It's not a big amount here. At that same time, my legs are bending. I want to feel like my knees are separating a little bit. I get some space in them. And that's the opposite of standing up out of posture. So when you shallow the club, that works well with that. What I don't want to do is the opposite of what I talked about there, which is tuck my butt under, brings me out of my posture. When I do that, my knees straighten too early. I stand up and I flip. So knees straightening too early is a real problem. What you want to have is tuck down with your pelvis, get your knees wider, get your legs bent, and then from there, I'm closer to the ground so I can get shaft lane, and I'm not releasing all that until the straight line release out here. So I need to feel like I'm releasing or kind of going from a squat to an extension. This is in the golf swing. I'm standing up this way, but it doesn't happen until I'm at my squat and then I extend when I'm going in my straight line release. That's why you see people here in the downswing, and then as they go through slowly, watch the lead leg as I'm doing this. They go through slowly, then it's going to straighten out, and I'm going to be extension as I come on around. So now look at me all fully extended where I was here starting the downswing. So it kind of goes from there, and it slides on through, extends, and then you finish nice and tall. If I was going to do it left-handed, it'd be the exact same thing. I'm going in the downswing here, lead knee out, flexing my legs, and then I'm letting all that release into my straight line release there, and then I'm coming up into my full swing. So if you're feeling like you want your knee straight at impact, that's a little too early. It could help you to hit 2-3 miles an hour more swing speed, possibly, by standing up and throwing your knees early. So that can be, it can feel like you're swinging harder and you're going to get more distance if you straighten your knee at impact. But in reality, it'll cause you to stand up out of your posture. You'll have to flip the club a little bit. You'll have a few things that go on that are less than ideal because of that. So try not to let that knee straighten until you're through impact and into the straight line release. So Steve H., I don't know if you're still on here. Let me know if you followed the 20-minute shallowing fix, and as you've done those drills, you still have trouble pulling it. If so, I'll answer before I get off here. If you haven't done the 20-minute shallowing fix, that's gonna fix it right away, because that really gets the path going way to the right. Gene, I saw Q's video. Okay, Steve, yes, you have. All right, so let's get into that. So if you're struggling still to get the path enough to the right, check your ball position. Okay. Yeah, Steve and Tom. All right. I'll make sure so check your ball position. I want to go over this for a minute. If my ball is too far forward, then it's going to be impossible to swing out to the right. So you imagine if I'm trying to swing, if my ball's on my front foot let's say with an iron, I'm going to really exaggerate. Let's say my ball's way up here. I couldn't swing out to the right because my body's in the way. And I can't get my arms going that far out there either. If I played the ball way back here, it would be impossible to swing to the left because I'd be hitting my body in the fall through. I'd be able to swing way inside out. That would look like this if I'm going from this angle. Ball position way in the front, I can't reach it from the inside. The only way I can swing is coming over the top. Ball position way in the back. Again, my body being the way, I can't even hit it going that way. I'd only be able to swing way inside out. So check to make sure with your irons, you don't want your ball position, way up in your stance. Probably not there. Sorry, you couldn't even see the ball there because I'm cut off the screen. I was exaggerating by going way up here and way back here. So first, check to make sure in the middle of your stance. That's probably not the problem. it's probably your hips. So when you get your hips and they stay back in the downswing, it makes it impossible to do anything but to swing to the left because I can't get my arms moving inside out when my hips are there. So when you're doing these drills, what I want you to do is take your hips, bump them forward. Again, your upper body's going to tilt to the right like that, and feel like you create this big gap here. So my hips go forward, my upper body's behind it, and now I've got this big pocket that's going to allow me to swing more to the inside out. Another great little drill that some of these I didn't quite put in the course. They're right on the cusp of being able to put it into the course. Take a box like this. I'll show you from this angle first. Something that's not going to hurt you or hurt your club. And we're just going to do slow swings. If I put this club in front, about a club and a half, a grip and a half in front of it, and I put it about, so if this is the inside of the box, I put it about 6 inches this way in relationship to the box. Let me grab it back here so you can see a little better. So this is my target line. I'm going to put it out here. Now I try to hit some little chip shots with this box. I'm hitting it this way. You'll notice how I have to get my hips way forward to be able to miss that box and hit it that direction. You just get used to it doing some chip shots. Same thing if I'm going this direction. I just set it up like that. Basically, it's exaggerating me to really get me. I'd have to get my hips forward, get my weight on my left, and then be able to swing out there. So piece number 1 is ball position. Piece number 2 is hips forward, upper body back. Piece number 3 is my weight shift. So you can see that if I'm trying to, if I'm keeping weight on my right foot, it's tough to reach the ball there too. So for example, let's say I have my tilt is good. So my hips are forward, my upper body's back. My ball position is good, but I'm keeping my weight on my right side. I just can't swing out to it. I have to swing across it slightly. So I want to feel like my weight gets to my front foot as I'm doing that. And now look at this huge gap here. I can feel like so my head's behind the golf ball, but my weight is on my front foot. And that really clears out a ton of space here to where you can really hit it inside out. So there's a few different things I mentioned there, but it's ball position, it's hips forward, upper body back, and then it's weight getting to that front side, and you're clearing out a bunch of space here to where you can swing 20 or 30 degrees out to the right. And I'll just show you what that looks like. So if I'm going here, I won't hit it because there's stuff over there. But if I'm going from this position, ball in the middle, a big bump in my downswing to where I'm in this position, and then my weight would be to the left. I could swing 30 degrees out to the right. Same thing here. Ball in the middle, a little bump, get my weight to the left. I could hit it just directly over that direction, no problem. It's all a body positioning thing. So if your hips are in the way, you can't get the path no matter what you try to do with it. So hope that helps. If you have any more questions, let me know right before I jump off here so I don't leave you hanging. Let's see here. Hey, thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. Yeah, no problem. I enjoy talking about this stuff, so it's not really work for me. I saw Q's video on how pressure moves in the full swings. Could you help with how pressure center mass moves in less than full shots? Great question there. It's not going to tend to be as big of a shift. So in shorter swings, like when you're around, say, 20 yards, 30 yards from the green. So let me say that. Full swing. Weight goes right early. When we're about halfway back, the weight starts to shift to the left. And then as I come through the swing, my weight is to the left with my head still behind the golf ball, and then I swing on through. That's going to be the same for lob wedge, sand wedge, all the way up to driver. Every club in between, it's exactly the same. All full swings are all the same. You'll see a little bit more weight shift. this is just kind of an interesting thing to think about, but because the driver is so much longer and I'm moving it faster, as my driver goes over here, the actual weight of the head, if you're looking on pressure plates, you'll see a bigger weight shift to the right just because this club is moving farther out there. It's a longer club. You'll also see a bigger weight shift to the left in the driver. So I'm not physically trying to do that. It's just because the club's longer, the mass gets farther over there. When I'm hitting shots, so that's every full swing. So if you hit your sand wedge, let's say 80 yards, just throw kind of an average number at it, 70 yards, whatever it is. Everything from 70 to full, same exact weight shift. If your full swing sand wedge is 70, you're going to have the same weight shift all the way down to 35, 40 yards. So if I'm hitting a 35-yard sand wedge, I'm using the same technique that I'm using with a full swing. I'm just narrowing my stance a little bit. I'm hitting my normal ball position, and I'm just making a shorter full swing. So my weight shift's right. I probably go back to here, and then I just come on through, and that's going to be a 35, 40-yard shot. All right, so just looks something like this, which is really just the same mechanics as a full swing, just smaller. So smaller on the way back, smaller on the way through. That's the only difference. As you get real close to the green, you're going to start with your weight a little bit more on the left, and then your weight's going to stay more on the left the whole time. So it kind of starts slightly more on the left. And we're not talking about like this, like way on the left. I don't want you to get way on the left and you're chopping down into the ground. If it's 50-50, let's say it's 60-40 left or 55-45 favoring the left. Then in the backswing, you're not going to get off the ball as much to the right. It's just going to kind of be a little tiny weight shift. So maybe you're 50-50 here. And then as you come through, you're obviously on the left again. So really all it is on the shorter shots, you're just kind of keeping it. I don't even like the idea of staying left the whole time, because a lot of times I see people try to stay left the whole time. All of a sudden they're looking like this and they're way out there in front of it and they start chopping down into it. I'm talking just slightly favoring the left, like 5% more on the left, 5% less on the right. And you almost feel like it's not true. This is what's happening. There still is a little bit of a weight shift there, especially because the club's moving this way. You're going to have a weight shift right and then back left. But the internal feeling, what it feels like inside your body, is you just slightly favor the left, and then it's almost staying there the whole time. It's really doing the same thing, though. I'm slightly favoring the left, and then I'm just getting a little right and left. Like, so see my feet kind of lifting up just slightly, and that's me shifting my weight. That same thing is happening in these short swings, but in the big swings, in my driver swing, it's, I'm feeling like that pressure is really moving around. In a little 10, 15 yard pitch shot, it's just a little tiny slight pitch, just a slight weight shift. It's a nice little rhythm there. So it still goes right and left. It's just not nearly as big. And you may even feel a little more favoring toward the left, mostly just because a big part of weight shift is being able to hit the ball far. So I need to get a weight shift off the ball and then through the ball to hit it 300 yards. When I'm hitting it 10 yards, I don't have to hit it far. So there's still a little tiny weight shift there, but you can almost favor the left the whole time and it'll be fine. That's why, favoring the left the whole time in the full swing, you could even hit it straight doing that, but you're just not going to hit it as far. So it's better to hit it farther. The advantage of hitting it farther outweighs, the mediocre gains you get from hitting it slightly straighter. So in the power turn section, I've yet to comprehend how putting pressure at address on the right foot helps to get the right side back behind my body in the backswing so I can push my body back up toward the right hip. Let me read that one more time here, make sure I got that right. So I think what you're talking about here, let me know if I'm off, Tom, would be when you're making your backswing and you're rotating your hips, getting the pressure on this right side is going to get this hip to go back this way to clear the hip behind it, and to help you rotate your body. So think of it like a piston. If I have my legs bent, these are almost like, they're not really levers, but think of it like that here for a second. If I have these bent, now when I straighten it, I can apply force. So if I'm going to straighten this leg, I have to put more weight on this leg and push that way to get it to straighten. And when that happens, that moves my body here. So for example, if I have my weight on my left side, I can't do anything with this right leg to get that hip to turn. Or if you're floating in the air, imagine you're just kind of floating in outer space. You can't push anywhere to get these hips to rotate. So the only way, that's a big complicated way of saying, the only way I can get these hips to rotate is by bending my legs first and putting pressure into this leg if I want this leg to move. I have to put pressure into this leg if I want that leg to move. So in the backswing, what you're doing is you're getting a weight shift to the right. This leg starts to straighten slightly and turns my hip, turns my shoulder. So that's that weight shift to the right and turn. In the downswing, my weight shifts to the left. This leg's bent. Just like we talked about earlier, it's going to start to fire and clear everything out that way into my straight line release. So if I'm looking at it this way, it's going to be right leg turn. I get my weight on my left leg. It has to be bent. It has to stay bent. And then through there, I go straight line release. And this is all clearing out of the way. This is all going this way to get that to release on out. So that's all it is. A little bit of leg bend, weight shift and turn, weight shift and turn. So it's just that, again, it's that right and left weight shift, turn, turn. It's almost like if you had it'd almost be intuitive if you had a big giant basket of range balls that are 30, 40 pounds. You know, you wouldn't just pick the range balls up like this. You'd get a little bit of momentum with it, and you'd almost have to use a little bit of that weight shift to sling the balls back. You'd shift your weight to the left, and then you'd use that to swing it forward. So it kind of looked like something like this. You know, if I was trying to move that, I'd have to use my legs and use this weight shift to get that moving, especially if it was really heavy where I had a tough time swinging it. Almost like, here's an impact bag here. You know, if this weighed 60, 70 pounds, I'm trying to get the momentum of this going to where turn, it kind of is tough because I'm pausing here, turn, and then turn through. So it's the same kind of thing to where that's the same thing in the golf swing, turn through on the way to play with that. So you don't want to, there's a misconception in golf that you want to kind of lock everything in. The less movement that you have in general, the straighter you're going to hit. That's not really the case. You want movement, but controlled movement. So I don't want my head flying around all over the place. I'm not going to be doing this in the golf swing, but I'm getting those same little pressure shifts, and it's looking like this. So, you know, I'm turning this way, turning that way. My weight is shifting. My body's moving. I can turn it bigger and bigger. There's not huge movements in my spine, but there is big weight shift movements, hips turning, knees really moving a lot. That's all good stuff in there. All right, so let's see here. So the right shoulder side bend move is at the seed squat. So the seed, yeah, all that stuff is related. So if you go into the seed squat is what I was talking about. When you start the downswing, your pelvis tucks down, the knees separate out, the knees are flexed. That's that seed squat. He's doing that to load into the ground, and then from there, he's driving the legs and letting it go through. Same way if I was had that bag in, I'm going to let the legs bend, and then I'm going to toss that bag this way. So it's a little knee movement, and then I would be tossing the bag. So my knees are going from flexed, that's a seed squat, and then from there, you're letting it extend on through. So that's the only way that you would really get the momentum working correctly. If I was going to toss this bag, that's exactly what I'd do. I'd have to bend my legs and then let them fire. You know, that's an easy way to let it fling out there if it's heavy, rather than what I wouldn't do is I wouldn't try to keep all this locked in and straight and do it this way. You know, that would be way too much upper body dominated, hands and arms into it, I wouldn't have any feeling of flow, rhythm, or control in the swing if I did it that way. Yeah, so thanks, guys. Thanks, Dan, Tom. Yeah, no, I need to get some hats and shirts. We don't have a good way to do it. We need to figure out a way. We don't have a. We never really shipped anything out and done the logistics of shipping stuff. But yeah, we got some. We need to get some hats, t-shirts, maybe some polo shirts, stuff like that would be pretty cool. I keep on saying we're going to do that, but just never got around to making it work yet. So, yeah, maybe I'll look into. I think there's some good companies now that even do most of that for you. If I find one that can kind of fulfill it all, then what we'll do is we'll put a link up on the website. Probably shoot you guys an email if there's some hats and stuff like that. And we're not going to charge an arm and a leg. It wouldn't be a money-making thing. Just be a great way to. I appreciate you guys supporting us and wanting to wear some of the Top Speed Golf stuff and telling people about Top Speed Golf. It really helps a ton. So, I really appreciate you guys, especially if you're here in these office hours, especially regular. Like, I know you guys are on here on a regular basis, and it's just a huge help for the company and everything. So thanks again for your support. If you guys need anything else, let me know. And if not, you guys will be seeing Q tomorrow. All right. Looks like no more questions. Been great hanging out with you. Hope you have a great day, and I'll see you guys later.